Good morning, Rob. Thank you for agreeing to do this video interview with me this morning. Could you give our audience a little bit about your background, tell us about where you live, where you work, etc.?
Sure. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I work for Texas Instruments in the Education Technology Group. This is the group that makes the graphing calculators that you probably used in high school, and we also do quite a lot of other kinds of things with math and science education. Prior to that, for a long time, I was up in the Chicago area and worked in a number of different places. For 15 years, I was the chief instructional architect of a system called Plato Learning, which is still out there. It's one of the original computer-based instruction systems.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your first exposure to human performance technology?
Sure. It was while I was in my doctoral work at Indiana University in Bloomington back when the Earth was cooling, and as you know, Bloomington is a bit of a hotbed of HPT activity. Always has been because of the influence of Tyagi and other people. And I actually took a course from Tyagi at one point, and started hearing about HPT in that kind of a context. And this was back when the term was just being coined, really. And the question that came up at the time was sort of what do we call this thing that we do? It's broader than instructional design, and it's certainly broader than program learning, and broader than training. And yet at the same time, we think we have something really unique to offer in terms of systematic thinking about performance problems. And so the question is, what do we call that thing? And that was out of that kind of a dialogue that was going on back then in the mid-1970s came the term HPT, and so I was sort of right in the middle of that.
Excellent, thank you. Who besides someone like Tyagi, the others at Indiana University and elsewhere, who have been your biggest influences in this world of human performance technology?
Oh, gee. There are so many. Certainly Bob Mager and Gary Rumler have been major influences. There was at the time in Chicago at Arthur Anderson a very large and very professional corporate training and HPT group, and I learned a great deal by interacting with my colleagues there through the local Chicago chapter of ISPI. At the same time, some important books and articles started appearing in what is now Performance and Instruction, and some of those were, I think, considered to be quite seminal. Some of those works by people like Claude Lineberry, for example, and certainly Joe Harless, who was perhaps one of the most effective people in sort of making it all accessible at the time. So very important influences. Also, I happened while I was in my doctoral work in Indiana, there happened to be a very strong behavioral psychology group in, of all places, the business school, and in the organizational development department in the business school, which is a bit of an unusual place for it. But I had, as a result of that, I had some very, very strong coursework in behavioral psychology that has served me well ever since. Subsequently, I added to that considerable work in cognitive psychology and so on, and that came from some other people not directly involved with the society. So there's that. In terms of the work of the of instructional design or the training side, I paid very close attention to the kinds of things that Harold Stolovich has done over the years. Rich Meyer has certainly been very articulate working with Ruth Clark in summarizing the solid research base. I've always paid very close attention to what the solid, what the underlying research is that's backing up our field, and those are the people that I tend to read.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of reading, you are an author yourself and have written several books and chapters. What have you published in the near past, and what are, if anything, are you working on here for the future?
Well, we're just, Ken Silver and I just finished editing Volume 1 of the new handbook series, and Volume 1 is on instructional design. Quite excited about it. I think it captures the state of the art in that field better than anything that I've seen recently, and really talks about what the leading edge is in terms of instructional design. It's a field that has evolved very rapidly over the past decade or so, and this is really the first book, I think, that book-length treatment of some of those new developments. So I'm very, very, very excited about that. Ken Silver and I and Mike Stelnicki did a book a couple of years ago on a textbook on instructional design, which reflects some of the cognitive underlying changes in cognitive learning theory that are quite important. And that book is still in print. It has been adopted in a number of programs, and it's very well received.
Excellent, thank you. Can you share with us a couple of HPT type project efforts that you've been involved in over the years?
Oh gosh, sure.
Some of your favorites.
Yeah. Okay.
Not all of them.
Well, one of the ones actually is one that was reported on here at this conference, and it was done by Ellen and I, who at the time was a client of mine at AC Nielsen, and the problem that she had was they have very high level consultants globally who work with major corporations on marketing strategy and product strategy. And they and the challenge that they faced was attempting to standardize the performance and establish the expertise of these people. They all came up; they're all very long in the tooth in the organization. They have a great deal of organizational experience, but it's all different. And what they tend to do depends a lot on what it is that they what experience that they